the thing that does keep me up at night is if Josh, Bobby, Lisa, Max, if they all win and I don't, then I'm off to the Caribbean, mate. That's it.
The WhatsApp group gets deleted.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello and welcome to the Lib Dem Podcast. And we are back with our series looking at our future MPs. And today we're staying in the north, and we're staying in the northwest with a wonderful candidate for Cheadle and regular of the podcast, Tom Morrison. Hello, Tom.
Hey, John. How you doing?
We are very well. Well, we're recovering. I mean, there's a lot of politics going on. And the first question we've got to ask now, which is important for all politicians, is, have you ever received a fine from HMRC?
You know what, John? I don't make enough money to get a fine from HMRC.
Okay, fair enough. For those that are watching this, like, months down the line, is that we're right in the middle of the Nadine Zahawi tax scandals that are happening at the moment in the Tories, and we'll talk about what's happening at the Tories now. How has this changed for your prospects in Cheadle? Go check out some of our other next MP episodes, whether that's Josh Babarindi or Bobby Dean, and we're going to be doing loads more coming forward as we really start ramping up into the general election, because you need to know who these people are, because not only will these be the future leaders of our party, but also, from our point of view, if you, like me, live in an area which isn't a target seat, you want to go and help these people get elected, because there's no point in moaning about Lib Dems not having enough MPs if you're not going to fight in the places that need MPs. So, right, that's my little campaign pitch done, Tom.
Love it.
I suppose the first question is mostly, who is Tom Morrison?
Who is Tom Morrison? Oh, I didn't realise we were going through a therapy session, John.
We'll see. It might go very into. If we start crying and shaking in a corner, we might have to end the podcast.
So I grew up in Stratford-upon-Avon, which is Nadine Zawari's is his constituency. So probably everyone across the UK has probably heard my mom effing and jeffing while all this news comes out about Nadine. He is not a popular man in my family household anyway. So it's been the talk of the Morrison / Massey WhatsApp group over the last couple of weeks. So I grew up in Stratford, and I was always, I had a very kind of political upbringing, really. My dad was a trade union socialist. My mom was like the first liberal of the family. I remember that it was probably the first election where the Liberal Democrats actually, like local elections, where they stood as Liberal Democrats. And my mom was getting really excited about voting for the Liberal Democrats and kept on talking about the Yellow Party. And I became obsessed with this Yellow Party that was around. And in Stratford, it was, we voted, the family voted Lib Dem because it's against the Conservatives, and, Labour couldn't win and all that. So it was a lot of tactical voting. But I guess the time where I really became politically aware and kind of realised how powerful it was, particularly local politics, was when so my mum and dad split up when I was younger, and my mum really struggled. She worked several jobs to kind of keep a roof over me and my brother's head. But she was, unfortunately, because she had a private landlord, we were threatened with homelessness. And it was literally, we were on the brink of having to go and stay on someone's couch. And it was a Lib Dem councillor that got my mum a council house. And it was like the first time since my mum and dad split up that we were able to get we had a permanent roof over our heads. I was able to have a bedroom with my football posters up on the wall, and place to do my homework and stuff. I was about 13 at the time, and it was a councillor called David Bruce, who I then went and I helped him deliver leaflets and knock on doors in his ward and stuff. So that was like one of his key volunteers. So that was like the moment where I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to get people houses and I want to help people and stuff. So that was kind of my entry into the Liberal Democrats, really.
And so was it always kind of with your mum, and obviously you said your dad left when you were fairly young, but was your mum always kind of, was it just the kind of was it like party political, or was it more like a kind of a philosophy of kind of being liberal and tolerance and things like that came into it as a young age?
Yeah, a little bit of both, actually. I think there was definitely a part, but it was definitely a politically conscious family in terms of, I remember the 97 election. I remember coming down the stairs in the morning to the kitchen, the 97 election, and my mom crying because the Tories had been kicked out and it was the beginning of this new era. And so there was this real kind of big party we were interested in politics. We were interested in government, and we were interested in the kind of the scandals and all that kind of stuff. And let's not forget, leading up to that 97 election, it was a fun time in politics because the Tory sleaze and scandal was just like, it was in the papers all the time, wasn't it? So there was a lot to talk about.
I don't know, I'm too young.
Well, you're too young, are you? Oh my God. Showing my age, mate. I'm showing my age. There was this kind of, I always grew up with, particularly my dad kind of instilling the values of like looking out for people that were less fortunate than you. And he was an actor by trade, but before he went into acting, he was a dock worker. And so he instinctively had those very kind of like community, I'd say people would say they're traditionally socialist values, but actually I think they're the kind of community values that Liberal Democrats have as well, is that we do look out for the kind of the less well off. We do look out for the vulnerable and kind of those people that need support. And so I did kind of grow up with that being instilled in me in quite an early age.
And obviously that's a fairly major, because we've talked about several people, and some people have come from completely non-political families and kind of come into it because of a certain event, whether that's big national politics, say like for me it was Iraq and ID cards that kind of got me into it. But for you, obviously, you had almost a direct input to the goodness that politics can do. And we forget actually the politics of what we're all there. And this isn't a liberal thing. It's actually, I genuinely believe this from all parties, that actually politics were there to do good. Yeah. And actually to make people's lives better. And so you almost got the best of it right from the start.
Yeah, with a healthy degree of cynicism as well, because where I grew up, we had a Tory MP, Tory council, and let's not forget, it was when that time where we were we were literally facing living on the streets. It was like the MP, the council, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. It was the Lib Dem councillor that basically was the one that worked on it. So there was this a degree of which is why I absolutely adore Cheadle, because it does remind me of home, and it reminds me we do have a Tory MP that you have to read the leaflets to see the stuff I put on Twitter, but we do for what I see is we have a Tory MP that doesn't really get the area and does ignore the important things. So it does remind me of the kind of the area I grew up in. So I think that I absolutely see the positivity that politics can do, and I absolutely I love politics. I love the transformational power it can have on people's lives. But equally, I think sometimes it helps have a little bit of anger to get you out of bed in the morning as well. So
yeah, and that's people get active sometimes for one reason, whether that and a class one reason has been Brexit. Some people have got active, and then I thought doing some good in the community is also what keeps them there generally, because you can have things that burn very hot and bright, very short-lived topics, but actually being in the midst of it and being able to do some good is a kind of a long burn that can keep you going. But you brought up Cheadle and how much you love it. So let's describe Cheadle. Give us an overview of Cheadle for people that don't know where Cheadle is or its kind of demographics.
Cool. So yeah, Cheadle's it's the south of Manchester. It's in Greater Manchester. It's more a kind of a collection of villages. So we have Cheadle Village at the centre, which is what the constituency is named after, and then we got areas Cheadle Hume, Hill Green, Bramwell, and it's almost like Cheshire meets Greater Manchester. So you have that kind of the people that have probably wanted to move out of the main city and moving here. Then you have that real Cheshire influence with that kind of village lifestyle. But the thing that really gets me, we have so many wonderful pubs in Cheadle. It's fantastic, John. And I've only taken you to one of the pubs, and we need to do more pub crawling in Cheadle. But the one thing it's got more of is community groups, and there is everyone in this constituency is fighting for something. And that's what being a councillor here is hard work, because you have to stay on your toes and know what the latest things are. But we've got campaigns to save the green belt. We've got campaigns to build more train stations, to get more steps on train stations, some campaigns to stop train stations. We've got campaigns like the campaign for Real Ale. We've got Amnesty International, Friends of the Earth. It's just huge. And I think that's what the exciting thing about Cheadle is that by and large, everyone is invested into the community or into their little pocket. And which is why I think there's actually a really healthy political culture here. And when I say political, it's small p political, because people actually care and take an interest, which is why we have really big turnouts at general elections and big turnouts at local elections as well, because people really care.
I mean, when the party and commentators and pollsters talk about blue wall, they assume southern seats is the kind of default. But actually what they're talking about is affluent suburbia, basically. Exactly. And that's why, I mean, Cheadle is so important, because actually, I think it may be my own Lisa that said there are northern outposts and Midlands outposts of these kind of that, you know, are definitely winnable for the Lib Dems. And obviously you are in the prime non-southern target seat pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the blue wall. And we've had a couple of like journalist visits, you know, to kind of do profile pieces on Cheadle, and they do come and say like, oh, it's really like the southeast here, isn't it? And it's like, no, the southeast is very much like Cheadle. That's
So, I mean, the history of the seat. So previously it had been a fairly solid Tory seat up until the point where Patsy wins. And do you want to talk a little bit about the history when Lib Dems finally took the seat in 2001?
Yeah, so Patsy was basically, for those who knew her, that she was an absolute force of nature. And unfortunately, I never got the opportunity. I was lucky enough to meet Patsy. But you still, when you're knocking on doors, you still get people coming out and saying, I started voting Lib Dem because of Patsy. And
Patsy Colton, for people
Patsy
that don't
Colton, yeah. And she won the seat by, I think it was 33 votes.
Yeah, 33 votes
in 2001. And that was the shock of the night. It was the story that kind of led that general election. And from what I can tell, it's basically, and you still meet activists that are just like, yeah, I got involved because Patsy, just this force of nature. And her husband Clive still lives in the constituency, and he's very involved. And yeah, so she won, and then sadly, she held the seat in 2005, but sadly passed away soon after holding the seat. And then there was a by-election, which was one of the kind of famous Lib Dem by-elections of recent times, where Mark Hunter held the seat for us. And I think, again, you meet this is what's brilliant about Cheadle and the Liberal Democrats as well. Everyone feels like they own a bit of it because they were involved in either Patsy's campaign or they were involved in the by-election. So everyone you meet, you can never kind of say to people, oh yeah, I'm from Cheadle and this is what we did. And they're like, oh, I know Cheadle. I stayed there and I delivered leaflets. So it was like the big by-election very early on in that 2005 period of Parliament. And we held it, and then Mark held it until the 2015 debacle, I guess we could call it, yeah.
But it is interesting. I mean, I've got all the figures here for actual results. So even in 2015, I mean, this seat has been so marginal since Patsy won it by 33 votes. Never really more than a few thousand votes have separated. It's never been some gigantic, 10, 12, 15,000 majority everywhere. So even in 2015, when Mark sadly lost his seat, it was 6,000, which now you'd think actually is it something we could turn around? I would expect to turn around. But I mean, so going forward from that, so Mark then tried to take the seat back in 2017. He got it down to 4,500, and then you came along in 2019 and half that majority to only 2,336, which is why you are one of the top candidates in the whole of the UK. But what's interesting is also is talk about that Labour vote, because what happened is that the increase of Labour vote was obviously, so when Mark won it in 2005, the Labour vote was down to below 5%. which is very interesting. And obviously since then, because of coalition and whatever else, it has crept up and up and up to the point where it got 19% in 2017 and then 12.5% in 2019. I mean, we've talked a lot on the podcast about Labour's strategy in 2019, which was sometimes just screw over the Lib Dems, but actually you've got to, how are you imagining this next election coming in terms of you've got to assume that Labour vote is got to be willing to get rid of the Tories and know that you are the man to do it.
Yeah, and we're definitely picking that up now. Like, and it started, to be fair, it started to happen, but probably happened a little bit too late in the last general election. We, early on when we were knocking on doors, there was still that kind of like, but do I trust you to go? Are you going to go for the Conservatives and that kind of thing? And then towards the end, you could feel that people were like, no, we need to stop Boris Johnson. I'm going to vote Lib Dem. So, and I think it's fair to say, you touched on it there, that Labour's lack of focused targeting impacted us across the board. And there was one, I won't mention who it was, there was one Labour activist, well-known Labour activist at the count after the last general election, who basically came over to me and said, I'm really sorry, I don't know what we've done. And it's like, well, exactly.
We talked about this on Lisa's podcast about Hazel Grove, which is the neighbouring seat to Cheadle. That on polling day, because I was there in Hazel Grove. I've committed to Cheadle this time. I've agreed. I mean, Lisa's still trying to negotiate, but I've said, look, I'm going to be in Cheadle this time. In the pouring rain. And we had Labour activists out in Hazel Grove specifically to stop the Lib Dems winning in a seat that they couldn't, and they lost the neighbouring. They lost the neighbouring seat. Yeah. I mean, it was just bitter stupidity. And we hope Labour are in a better place, but we will see.
Let's see. I think we can't. The thing is, we can't rely on Labour to do us any favours. And I think the electorate though are getting wise to how this electoral system works. So it's up to us though to convince people to vote the right way.
And before anyone writes in or talks to me about it, I am not talking about electoral pacts. I'm not talking. They don't work. We've done this multiple times on the podcast, and if you start asking for it, I'll send Hannah Kitchen round, and then and then you'll quickly forget. So let's talk about the current MP is Mary Robinson. Who I don't know. What's your impression of her then, Tom? What's Mary Robinson? You said she doesn't quite get the constituency. I don't think she would be a well-known councillor. Obviously, she was a councillor in South Ribble, up in my neck of the woods in Lancashire, but not someone who you'd think of as a big known name within the Tory party, and whether that affects you really, because people think of some of the close fights we're going to take out Dominic Raab is probably one of the big ones, and will get people G'd up to go help Monica do that. Well, how do you rally the troops to get rid of Mary Robinson?
So I think Mary is she's just basically the uber Tory loyalist, and it doesn't matter who's in number 10 or who's leading the party, that she'll follow blindly through the ranks to kind of vote the way that she's told. I mean, she was one of the MPs that voted on, I've forgotten what the actual the vote was on, but it was on the reforms to basically to stop water companies dumping sewage in, and so she voted on that, and then a couple of days later the government then U-turned on it, but there's no, and so she's often like that, and you do meet a lot of people, and people are kind of getting sick of it now, really, across Cheadle, because, as I said, Cheadle is this area that takes pride in the community approach, that the residents really take pride in that kind of community approach, and they take pride in their area. And Mary, I don't think she gets that, really. She'd rather, from my perspective, she would rather be in Westminster being like what she thinks as an MP, rather than someone that's actually fighting for Cheadle.
Yeah. So, and let's just get so listeners know, it's slightly complex scenario because obviously you're a Tory-facing MP. However, from a council point of view, this is very much a Lib Dem versus Labour fight, with Tories in distant third, I believe.
Yeah. They've got four councillors now on the council, and we're hoping to wipe them out at the next local elections. So we've got all to play for there, and yeah, it is a tricky one, and you have to get a balance because whilst in Cheadle, let's be honest, we need to convince Labour voters to back the Lib Dems, to back me to beat a Tory MP. We are still very much reminded that we are Liberal Democrats and not Labour light on the council, because there are things that the Labour Party are fighting for which I find abhorrent, really, and that kind of whole power grab that they try and do and centralise all their power, and that seems to be kind of the battle lines between us. But we try and keep it polite and amicable and genteel.
So with you were obviously the first of our potential new MP interviews that we're doing in 2023. So now that we know the general election's in pretty much everyone's mind now, my guess it won't happen till autumn 2024, but actually we're definitely in the run up to it. As soon as Liz Truss went on her little merry dance of 44 days, everyone started to focus on, okay, right, the Tory, we're in the end game of whatever is going to happen. So how has that affected your weekly routine? What do you do? I mean, what do you do for a living, first of all?
So I work in economic development. So I build, it's so boring, but I work in strategies for infrastructure projects and things like that.
Lib Dems love an infrastructure project.
Oh, mate, yeah, and we do some really there's a lot of clean energy that I work on and things like that. So it's very Liberal Democrat. But what I would say is what that does is give me a grounding to understand actually the economic problems that we face in this country. And you mentioned Brexit earlier, and I mean the absolute kicking that our ability to invest in vital infrastructure. I'm not even talking about kind of the nice to have stuff. I'm talking about energy. I'm talking about wind farms, solar, how our roads work. Brexit has given that an absolute beating. So to see that firsthand has actually been quite useful to talk to people on the doorstep.
And so what's your weekly routine like, Tom? Balancing work, personal life, councillor duties, target candidate. How do you get that balance?
So it's tricky, but I have a really good team here in Cheadle, and so obviously I have to work 40 hours a week to kind of keep a roof over my head. But there's a really good team of volunteers, councillors. I've got Jack Hollis, who's our organizer, who's probably more popular on Twitter than I am, and Paul Trollope is the regional campaigns manager. And together, they make sure things are running on time and making sure I need to be where I need to be, and door knocking in the right places and getting the leaflets out. But it is a challenge, John. I'll be honest. It's a challenge. It's busy, but you know what? It's worth it. I'm in such a privileged position that I get to represent the party I love in an area that I love. I couldn't I would never want to if I woke up one day and went, I hate this, then it's not worth doing. And I think you've got to make it work.
I think the pressures that you put under as a target candidate, I don't think you could do it if you hated it. Yeah. I just think there's, particularly as a Lib Dem, where, opportunities are so few and far between that you have to scrap, fight and grind your way to get where you want to get, that if at any point you thought, well, I'm not particularly enjoying this, you probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly, mate, exactly.
So we've talked a bit about, all the different parts of you that make up, your political career so far and where you might be going. So what has been, what have you learned along the way? And that, and what has been, would you say your biggest failure might be the way to start, actually? Things that you've learned from mistakes over the last, decade or so you've been involved in politics?
The biggest thing I've learned is delegation is a good thing, because it's like you, John, I come from a campaigning background. So before doing Cheadle, I worked in the party. I was a campaigns officer, and I worked for Nick in Sheffield Hallam and all those things. So I'm very much used to managing a campaign and running it. And so when I became a candidate, I had to learn. I would say learn very quickly, but I didn't really. I've only just started learning because I have people slapping me for it. But it's that I have to give up I have to give up power almost and let people do, and you have to trust people and get on with it. And that would probably be my biggest failing. And it's something I'm learning with, and and I'm growing as a person, John. I'm growing as a person, and I'm doing that. But I think
it's about trusting your team.
Exactly. And if you don't trust your team, then who are you going to trust? So, and I've got a great team around me. As I said, I've got a great agent as well, Mark. And so, just let them get on with what they're going to do, and just trust the process.
This is not going to. Me and Tom are good friends, for people that don't know. So this question may seem harsh, but he'll know where I'm coming from. So, how big a hit did you take after 2019? Because there were a lot of places going into 2019 think we should have won, Cheadle.
Yeah.
And actually, how did you kind of recover from that? How do you then pick yourself up after, 2019 was rotten. It probably took me about a good year and a bit to get over the slump I was in after 2019. How did you cope with that, Tom?
It's a really good question. And so obviously you're disappointed, like you are disappointed, and you start thinking like, what could I have done differently? But when you look at the figures of what happened in Cheadle, even though we lost, we got the second highest Lib Dem vote total in the constituency's history. So is that kind of like, well, we didn't run a bad campaign then. It just so happened that the turnout went straight up, and and all that kind of stuff. We got this. I think we got the highest swing for the Liberal from Conservative to Liberal Democrats in the North, I think. So there was so many things to be positive about, and the way I see campaigns, John, is like it's a game of chess, and the first round the Tories won. That's fine. The problem is I want to win the actual battle. So I have my plan. We cut the majority in half. There is definitely a route to victory now. The Tories aren't going to get more popular. So it was just a matter of telling myself that, speaking to the team, building the team, getting them back up on their feet. And, it's now going well. It's, everything that, we had a plan to win the seat. And strictly being honest, I probably had in my head, listen, this is a 10-year project. And, so when we go into the next election, I think that probably will be close to about 10 years. So since being selected. So yeah, I think that's it, mate. Just don't, I always think like, don't get too, obviously it's disappointing to lose an election, but don't make it like the be all and end all. Like just think about, right, what did I learn from the last election? How do we change that? And how do we win next time?
Yeah. And so winning next time, now as a target candidate and a top target candidate, what kind of pressure are you feeling dealing with that? Or do you not feel the pressure of it?
John, mate, if the thing that does keep me up at night is if Josh, Bobby, Lisa, Max, if they all win and I don't, then I'm off to the Caribbean, mate. That's it.
You WhatsApp group gets deleted.
Yeah, exactly. That is it. And it's absolutely, we're Liberal Democrats. It could happen. And so that's the thing that keeps me going. That is the pressure. If I didn't have that pressure, I'm intrinsically, I'm one of those people that always looks for the easy route. Yeah, so I need that pressure to keep me on my toes and drive it. And I need to make sure that I'm not the one person saying congratulations and everyone's saying, "Oh, gutted, Tom." I want people saying congratulations too. So yeah, let's keep on driving to that.
It's a weird time in British politics at the moment because there's so many things that are going wrong. There's whether it's the NHS crisis, you talked about sewage dumping. There's now a major war in Europe. There are lots of huge issues, strikes, high inflation, the economy crashing, mortgage payments. There's so many things you can hit the Tories on. But how do you then decide what campaigns you are going to fight for? How do you think of, because if you were to list all them, and we've all done it, how many people actually read a 100-page manifesto, a tiny, tiny amount? It's generally down to half a dozen key campaigns that you are fighting for. So what are the Tom Morrison's key campaigns?
So the important thing is like what's important to the people of Cheadle. That's the thing. So I could go on, like as you said, the Tories have given us too much almost. And so the key things here are the NHS. Every door you knock on, someone brings up something to do with the NHS, whether it's dentists, GPs, ambulance waiting times. It's the NHS. That is the key campaign for us here. We have a hospital in pretty much the centre of the constituency, Stepping Hill, which the staff are brilliant. The teams there are fantastic, but it is just underfunded, and it is you just look at it and you're just like, that is neglect. It is the absolute epitome of Tory neglect on the NHS. So we have a real symbolic kind of NHS thing to be campaigning for there. And sewage as well has been like such a because Cheadle is we have one big watercourse that goes through the constituency called the Mickerbrook. And that is it is polluted, and people know it because they walk their dogs there. They've grown up in the area in the woods that the Mickerbrook goes through, and it is the Mary voted to allow more sewage to be dumped into it like last week, and so we need to. The people of Cheadle are really angry about it. So
the NHS is clearly going to be at the moment. The NHS is the biggest, most important topic according to polling on people's minds, and how that gets better before the general election for the Tories, I don't know. But it is interesting the way. So this was a tweet, and I don't judge everything by Twitter, but it sometimes can give you a feel of where popular discourse is, or what's really driving people. Sometimes it's what drives your own people. You think, I often say Twitter isn't the real world, but there's a lot of Lib Dem leaning people on Twitter. And if you can drive them to get active, and yesterday the Lib Dems put a tweet out about sewage, about the MPs that have just voted for 15 more years of sewage dumping. That has been seen by 7.5 million people at the moment, one tweet, and had over, 8,000, nearly 9,000 retweets, which is massive for, given the normal Lib Dem ones, that is absolutely ginormous. And then you talk about the NHS stuff. So I'm not in a target thing, but I get the campaign figures like you do saying, okay, how does this relate to your area? Here's a local press release. I put that in the paper, never had a response like it. And actually, not even to the point, not even negative response, which is the one that really shocks me, because usually whenever I'm in the paper, there's always some keyboard warriors calling me an idiot, telling me to go away. Actually, just sheer angers. How has Britain got to this state?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the years of them underspending and in some places cutting. Is the chickens are coming home to roost now, and we're seeing it. I had just to deviate a little bit away from the NHS, I had a meeting yesterday with the GMCA, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and we were talking about police figures and recruitment and all that. And it was just, you could just see it there in black and white of like, this is what the last 12 years of successive conservative home secretaries has done is meant that crimes aren't getting recorded, crimes aren't getting solved, criminals aren't getting punished, and it's nothing to do with poor police work. It's nothing to do with kind of an underperforming police force. What it is because they don't have the resources, they don't have the money.
And that's right. And we're seeing things like, just a few days ago, there was I think it was in one of the papers where the Tories had briefed about, we're going to clamp down on nitrous oxide, laughing gas canisters. And I thought, of all the things that police are struggling with at the moment, they've basically, there are vast areas of this country where lots of crimes are decriminalised because they're never, the suspects are never found, they're never charged. We only have to look at incidents of burglary or rape to see conviction rates are absolutely abysmal in this country. And then what the Tories are also doing, which is probably their way of getting out of it, is saying things like, oh, we've recruited X amount of police officers, but we've actually fired all the support staff.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they'll say, oh, wonderful, we've got extra 1,000 police officers, but they're doing the work the support staff used to do, and so that's why the crimes are still are going. So it's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, exactly right. But, what are they going to talk about? They're not going to talk about clamping down on tax avoiders at the moment, are
No, that's true. Absolutely not. I imagine that will be very far from their mind. So we talked about how you first got into politics. So who has influenced you the most? I mean, you still obviously work in council with Mark Hunter, the former MP. Who else? I mean, you've got to say absolutely not, definitely not Mark.
Yeah.
But who else has influenced you on your journey to where you are now, Tom?
Oh, it's a whole host of people, really. Like, Market's actually just seeing him and seeing the way he works in the council chamber and things like that. I'm in absolute awe of that man. It sounds really cheesy, but my mom, like my mom's the kind of person that she used to spend her holiday time going over to Calais to help in the refugee camps over there and stuff like that. So like my mom's like a huge inspiration to me. But I'll tell you apart from the point of where David Bruce got us our home. Another thing that really kind of inspires me, and I still remember it to this day. You know those questions you asked about, what was the first political memory you have, or what's the first news story you remember? The first one I remember really is my dad's waking me up in the middle of the night and saying, "You've got to come and see this, you've got to come and see this," and taking me downstairs. And I was very young. I was like very excited because, I'd been woken up in the middle of the night. And he put me in front of the TV, and it was a man on a wall just cutting it, like, with a hammer, breaking it down. And my dad saying, like, "You will remember this moment for the rest of your life." And I was like, "What is it?" And he told me all about the Berlin Wall and what it represented and stuff. And I think that even just talking about it, I'm getting goosebumps. It's like, it's those moments of huge change and transformation and how lives can be changed just through political action alone. Absolutely. That is the inspiration for me.
And I've asked this of all our candidates, that if you had 10 times the budget that you do now, Cheadle HQ gets gold wallpaper or whatever Boris Johnson normally goes for, what would you spend it on if you had 10 times the budget? As a campaigner, as someone who's campaigned for a long time and knows about campaigning,
for the campaign, I'd get more staff. I'd get more staff.
Are they just outside of shot? Holding signs up saying pay rise?
No, pay rises. I get more staff. And then there's a really good friend of mine, Colin Eldridge, and we always have an argument about what's the most effective thing to spend on a campaign. And he thinks posters. His idea of a campaign is loads of posters everywhere. I'm like, for me, direct mail. The more direct mail I could get through the doors, that would be the best. But I think, that would be, if there are any donors out there that would like to spend on a target seat campaign in the Northwest, then Cheadle would definitely like another member of staff, please.
You know what's interesting though? I would normally agree with you about direct mail. I think it's by far the best regular thing you can do. But it's interesting from these by-elections, North Shropshire, Tiverton and Honiton, Cheshire and Amersham, the Lib Dems went very hard, very quickly with a high-profile poster campaign.
Yeah.
And I do wonder how much that affected Labour voters being able to squeeze it, because they just saw Lib Dem diamonds everywhere.
Yeah, so I think that's showing that we can win and we are the contenders is really important.
And I just think maybe that's something for, because we are a campaigning podcast and we do talk to the ground, that actually how many of us actually spend a lot of time about now, before we get into the election, the local election cycle or the general election cycle, thinking, actually, let's tap up our poster sites and let's see if they can go from a window post into a garden poster or something like that. And that. But comment below, what would you rather have, direct mail or posters? Let's see. Colin, you can only vote once. So, so we've talked a little bit about how the country's feeling. There's lots of things happening in this country. A lot of people are scared for this country. About just today, Jeremy Hunt's talked about managed decline of Britain. I mean, what gives you hope for the future, Tom? You want to be an MP to improve Cheadle, to improve Britain.
Yeah.
What gives you hope right now?
It's the people, John. Like, you've got it seems to me that managed decline, the Tories just see the worst in this country, don't they? They absolutely see the worst in this country, and they divide. And I'm not saying this about Conservative voters. It's the Conservative Party. They divide communities. They're too willing to write communities off. And I think that's the beauty of the Liberal Democrats, is that we see the power in community, we see the power in people. And this is a country that's, we have our faults like every other country, but this is the country that have done like enormous things. We were the linchpin. We were the linchpin between Europe and the US for so long, and being that kind of key diplomatic power across the world. It was a British person that invented the internet. It was like the most transformative piece of software, technological advancement the world has ever seen. This is an incredible country, and I think what we've got to do is start believing in the power of this country to overcome what it's facing, and the Tories are just not the answer to that at all.
And I think from a practical point of view, we're seeing it again for viewers. Listen, we're recording this on the 27th of January. Figures have just come out about the decline in the car industry. Where before Brexit, and the decline of the car industry isn't solely to do with Brexit, but it has had a huge impact in it. Britain really was right at the top echelons of car manufacturing in not just Europe, in the world. We had Nissan, Honda, all these sorts of companies with some of the most efficient plants in the world. That has now gone, but you'd think, okay, if the Tories have chosen Brexit, and Labour, but to be fair to Labour, they voted through this Brexit deal as well. But the plan for the next stage, for the energy, the electric generation of automobiles, there's no plan in place. There's no strategic plan for where's this country going to be in 15 years' time in terms of high-tech manufacturing. And high-tech manufacturing is basically, but it's military where I'm from here in Lancashire. But actually, we have the skills. We have brilliant university skills and everything else, so we could be leading in high-tech manufacture. But yet instead we see companies like British Volt that have gone bust in the last week.
Yeah, well, absolutely, mate. I just feel like this is the one thing I don't get. Like, we're an island nation. We have made, we have a history of quote unquote, ruling the waves. Why are we not the go-to country for tidal energy in the whole world? Why are we not the market leaders? Because we got everything there, but for some reason, there is just no leaders. There's no political bravery. There's no political leadership when it comes to that. And we're just, with this Conservative government, we're always just accepting that things are going to be dross. And it's just, it absolutely winds me up.
And I think that's where moderate Tory voters are moving away from the Tories. I think that's been the big thing. As they've lurched right under Johnson, they picked up various pieces, but I think they've lost the competency. And I think against Jeremy Corbyn, it was easy for the Tories to say, look, we're not Jeremy Corbyn. All right, that's that. And for the vast number of Tory voters, that was enough to keep them Tory. With Liz Truss and the debacle that's happened since, the moderate Tory voter, who's not, they're not some sub-breed that is like wants to hate this country. These are people that want to get along, and actually is probably roughly where the average Brit is in the country. They no longer see that Tory party as being the Tory party they maybe started voting for 40 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned the Jeremy Corbyn thing, and I think that's what he got wrong as well, is that he saw the worst in this country and talked too much about it. That's if you think about the great politicians, the great leaders that this country's had, it's about those people who have seen what a positive impact and what a positive difference this country can have, not just on its people, but on the world. And having that bit more of just an optimistic view of what we can achieve together. I get so angry about this kind of race to the bottom, and that's all the Conservatives do, I think.
And I suppose that our thing that we've said many times on the podcast is, don't just get angry, do something about it.
Yeah, exactly. Use that, as I said. Use the anger to get yourself out of bed in the morning. I think, and I don't want to misquote him on this, but I think it was Mark Patt when he was working at LDHQ back in the Cowley Street days, that he apparently used to wake up in the morning, read the Daily Mail, and have a bowl of Frosties, and that gave him the energy of the day to crack on and beat the right wingers. But I don't know. I don't want to misquote Mark Pack on that. So sorry if I have.
Yeah, he's clearly a Cheerios man. That's so right. So again, a question I've asked every single one of our thing as we approach the end of this interviews. What's the one question you'd wished I'd asked that I haven't?
Oh, that's a really good question. You could have asked me how people would get involved in the Cheadle campaign. And
that's going to be the very end question.
All right.
The campaigners thing comes into it straight away. Go on then.
Yeah, so if you go to www.tommorrison.org.uk, there is a nice volunteer link there that you can get involved. Or you can email me at tom@tommorrison.org.uk and I will point you in the right direction. And I'll even take people out for a drink after they come out and door knock and deliver and all sorts for us.
And for those of you that are listening to this who don't live nearby or not able to campaign, there are ways you can help. There's things like you can donate to Tom. There's other kind of backroom kind of different things. You can always, basically anyone can help out with a campaign. Absolutely. Can't they, Tom?
Absolutely. We need everything. We need absolutely. If you've got a skill that you don't think is useful, then I don't believe you. So any kind of skill, that's what I want. Yeah.
There we go. Well, thank you very much, Tom. Always a pleasure. This is, just so listeners know, this is probably our 4th time trying to get this interview done through illness, holidays, personal breakdowns. I think everything's kind of got in the way.
I was waiting for I did think it was going to be a zombie apocalypse that stopped this one. But yeah, so far we're okay.
Well, Tom, thank you so much. I'd like to say to everyone listening and watching, do help Tom if you can. And like I said, I've committed myself that maybe not during the local election campaign, but I will be down in Cheadle regularly. Me and Tom were talking about just before we went on air today about me coming down in a few weeks' time and actually doing a session down there. Help out your local target seat. You might be frustrated thinking, oh, why aren't the Lib Dems winning 200 seats? We're not going to win 200 seats. This is not the way first past the post works. We've got to win those 20, those 30, those 40 seats, get the balance of power, then change Britain. So get to your local target seat, help out people like Tom, and we will have success in the next general election. So thank you very much, Tom, and we'll be back with another episode very soon.